Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending the session, Urban Mobility Transition in 5 Sprout Cities. My name is Teresa de la Cruz, and I will be moderating the session. Today, representatives of the Sprout Consortium will discuss real-life experiences of 5 cities implementing innovative new urban mobility solutions, the adequacy of the existing policies, and how to address the required policy change. But first, on behalf of the organization, please let me review the housekeeping rules. The meeting is being recorded. Recordings will be made available online after the conference. For the speakers, please keep your microphone muted when not speaking, and when speaking, be brief and go to the point. This goes for the audience. You can write your comments in the chat. We will have polls, but not supported by hopping. Maria Jose will share with you the link to Mentimeter in the chat. You can ask questions in the moderated Q&A area, view who is attending in the People tab, and maximize your screen by hitting the chat or tapping the full screen icon. After the session, you will be able to check the event chat, not the polls, sorry, People and Q&A tabs, discover the other upcoming sessions. However, I think that this is the last one before the plenary. Try the networking function and send direct messages to other participants. So in this session today, we have with us 8 fantastic speakers representing both Sprout cities and academic partners supporting the cities in the project. We have with us today Gosia Kirchner from the Łukasiewicz Institute of Logistics and Warehousing, representing the city of Cali. András Vágány from the BKK Center for Budapest Transport. Carlo Masetto from the Comune di Padova. Batel Eshkol, representing the municipality of Tel-Aviv. Marcos Rosselló from Ferrocarrils de la Generalitat Valenciana, representing the city of Valencia. And as academic partners, we have with us my colleague Beatriz Royo from Zaragoza Logistics Center, Elpida Xenou from the Center from CERTH, the Center for Research and Technology Hellas, Hellenic Institute of Transport. And last but not least, we have with us Sara Tori from the Mobility, Logistics and Automotive Technology Research Center, BUV. So now, please, let's go with a quick roundtable. The speakers will introduce themselves and their role in the project. If you want, we can follow the order in the slide. So, Gosia, please break the ice.
Okay. Good morning to everybody. Still good morning. So I'm the head of sales and commercialization in Łukasiewicz Institute of Logistics and Warehousing. And in Elim, we are responsible for introducing one business case in the Sprout project. And we are introducing an IoT in the city of Kalisz for improving unloading operations in the city. It is a kind of a first step for the management system of a city. And it's not only about the technology, but about raising the awareness in the city and how to cope with the transition towards urban mobility. And we hope this implementation will bring them with much wider view on how this change can be made, even in such a quite small city. Thank you.
Thank you, Gosia. Now, András, please.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is András Vágány, and I work for the BKK Center for Budapest Transport. The BKK is the mobility manager of Budapest, and we, together with the Budapest Közút, which is the road operator of the city, we are the project partners in the Sprout project, and we are piloting micromobility solutions and public space reallocations in the project.
Thank you so much, András. Carlo?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Carlo Masetto, and I'm an environmental engineer and representative from Padua municipality in deploying the Sprout pilot project. and I'm kind of responsible for the tasks related to the project, and I'm supported in scientific part by the Venice International University that follow us in the implementation of the activities. And the pilot, the Padua pilot, is regarding the implementation of new mobility solution based on self-driving pods, both for freight and transport and passengers transports.
Thank you so much, Carlo. Batel, your turn.
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Batel Eshkol from the Mass Transit Unit at Tel-Aviv, and we are in a collaboration with the Technion, the Mobility Center in the Technion Technical Institute of Israel. We are implementing 3 different pilots in Tel Aviv regarding the new LRT lines that are currently being constructed in Tel Aviv-Yafo. We have pilots that deal with integrating different technological devices, such as using youth detector and integrating image processing to light traffic in Tel Aviv, as well as a third pilot that deals integrating road users into decision-making processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Batel. And Marcos, please.
Good morning, everybody. Rosselló. I'm engineering manager of Ferrocarrils de la Generalitat Valenciana. We are the only operator of metro and tram in the region of Valencia and Alicante. And the project, I'm the FDB leader of the Sprout project, and our pilot is based on to boost the mobility between our passengers of metro and the intermodal and sustainable transport models like bike. Okay, then we have developed a network of bike guarding with structures, with a system to control. Then a user of metro can accede to our stations by his own bike, and we keep of it while he's traveling with us. Another part of the pilot is based on to boost the last mile parceling. Then we put 2 machines of delivery automatic in our stations to make more easy for the travelers and users of metro to keep and to take their parcels. Then there are less trucks on the way delivering parcels to the people, and that's our pilot. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcos, for the explanation. Beatriz.
So hello, good morning. My name is Beatriz Royo, and I'm from CERTH, from Zaragoza Logistics Center, Spain, and together with Teresa, VUV, and CERTH, so we are in charge of coordinating and giving support to the pilot's implementation. So basically, this is my role in the project.
Thank you, Beatriz. Elpida.
Hello. Thank you, Teresa, for introducing us. And I may say that we have also a fantastic moderator. Don't forget that. So my name is Elpida Xenou. I'm a research associate at the Hellenic Institute of Transport, being involved in the coordination and technical development of several research projects on green, innovative, and cooperative urban logistics. My background studies are civil and transportation engineer, so I have some expertise also in mobility, but with a specialization in logistics and supply chain management. So in Sprout project, I support Georgia Ifodopoulou, the head of my sector, in the technical coordination of the project. And I'm responsible also for all the technical research activities allocated to CERTH. Today, we will have the chance to discuss with you and present you some of these technical developments. So I won't say much now. Thank you.
Thank you, Elpida, for the presentation and your kind words as well. Sara, it's your turn.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Sara Tori. I'm a researcher at urban mobility researcher at the VUB. As Elpida and Beatriz mentioned, we are coordinating helping to coordinate the pilots and the pilot implementations. But the VUB has also been involved in kind of looking at the ongoing transitions in urban mobility and logistics in the different sprout cities. At the beginning of the project, we also developed future urban mobility scenarios for the different cities, for which we are basing our pilots and our policy solutions on. And we are now also looking into a multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis for the evaluation of the policy alternatives with the cities and their stakeholders, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that towards the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Well, then, as advanced before, my name is Teresa de la Cruz from Zaragoza Logistics Center, and I have the privilege of coordinating this project. So now we have introduced ourselves, but now we want to know a little bit more about you, about the audience. So we will go to the first of our polls in Mentimeter. Maria Jose has shared with you the link to it, so please click on the link. Answer to the first of our questions. I will stop sharing the presentation and start sharing the Mentimeter. So please vote in the Mentimeter and let us know which sector do you represent. Maybe you are an elected official with technical or decision-making profile, or maybe you come from the academia. We can see now, or transport operator, logistics operator, new solutions, other. We had in mind many different sections, but we don't know transport provider. Wonderful. Maybe if the other could please write the sector that you are representing in the chat. It will be really interesting for us to know what this other means. Let's take advantage that we are not much of there is not much of us, so we can interact and we can know about the others and about the project. It will be really interesting. Good. So, well, mostly academia or research work, but we have a little bit of everything. Yeah, it's not the same being an elected city representative or a non-elected city representative regarding the burden that you carried. Okay. Good. Yeah. I think that we can close it now. And I will come back to the presentation. Okay. So let me swap. Now you, okay. We can go through this. No, sorry for that. Okay, so in order to give to the audience some context, please let me present very briefly the project. SPROUT stands for Sustainable Policy Response to Urban Mobility Transition. The project started back in 2019. It was supposed to finish by August 2022, but probably it will be extended since the pandemic has caused some delays on it. And the consortium is a mix of cities and municipalities, and also academic and technical support partners. The main aim of the project is to provide a city-led innovative policy response capable of harnessing the impacts of the new mobility solutions in a way that makes them more attractive to the users and more sustainable for the society as a whole. And in order to achieve this main aim, the project has 5 key objectives. First, understand the transition in urban mobility, foresee and identify the impact of the drivers of urban mobility transition, formulate a city-led innovative policy response, and we are now half of the way on it, provide tools to enhance local policy-making capacity, and navigate future policy on urban mobility. So in Sprout, we believe on this idea of cities cooperating for an appropriate policy response towards mobility transition. We believe that the impacts of the new mobility solutions still remain unclear, and that policies should be data-driven and also fact-based. So in order to do so, the project is articulated around a structure of 3 layers of cities cooperating among themselves. We have the pilot cities. The pilot cities are the cities that we have today with us, and they are implementing the new mobility solutions, and they are developing their city-specific policy responses in order to harness the impacts. We have a second layer of cities validating the results and also supporting us into widening the policy response from city-specific to a wider European level, let's say. And we have a third layer of cities learning from the project and supporting us by providing data, contributing in surveys, and following very closely our activities. So we are extremely lucky in the Sprout project, since we have a pool of 40 cities collaborating and cooperating in the project. Those are the innovative mobility solutions that our 5 pilot cities are implementing. They have already advanced in the presentation about this. 5 cities and a total of 9 use cases. Sprout pilots cover a wide range of different types of solutions focused on passengers, focused on freight, and combined freight and passengers as well, transport, and the pilots also cover a wide range of end users. So as explained before, Calist is working on this IoT-enabled smart parking for last mile deliveries. In Valencia, there are 2 use cases articulated around these intermodal passenger and freight transportation nodes in metro stations. The case of Padua is very disruptive. It's about autonomous mobility and cargo hitching. So this modular electric self-driving pod for mixed passenger and freight transport, combining cargo and public transport service. The case of Tel Aviv, under the umbrella of data analytics driven traffic and mobility management, they have 3 use cases. One in Bluetooth detectors data analysis of travel behavior mobility patterns, another one about reallocation of the public sphere, this balance between capacity but also city livability, and a very interesting case on prioritizing vulnerable road users at certain intersections in the street. And then Budapest has also 2 use cases, creation of micromobility points, integrated mobility and micromobility, and reallocation of the public space to reduce the dependency to car and increase pedestrian and cycling zones. So now I will stop sharing my screen, and I think that, let me stop sharing. Here you are. Perfect. Let's start the first round of questions, to the cities. I would like to know more about the mobility solutions implementation, and I would like to understand what are the main challenges or barriers that you have found in Sprout for deploying innovative urban mobility solutions. And I think that we can follow the order of the first slide. So if you want, Gosia, you can go first.
Okay, so Teresa, the question was about the barriers and what are the main challenges. Okay, so I'm always trying to get the bigger picture or look from the higher level. And in our experience, and also how we experience in the Sprout project, the main barrier and the challenge was, first of all, the awareness, lack of awareness of inhabitants. And it was not only the inhabitants, but when we approached also the public administration, it was an issue as well. It is a lack of awareness on how a transition towards these innovative solutions might help what are the threats behind it in case we don't do it. So it is very much about the awareness. Unfortunately, it stands not only behind the inhabitants, but also public administration that should push. But we realize that in case, even if this awareness is achieved, we will still get the problem of having competent people, having the right strategy that should be tailored towards the specific cities. Like, for example, when we started to analyze Kalisz situation and look through, okay, what kind of tourism they have, I was surprised that it is quite limited on one hand. On the other hand, is very much connected with the churches and the history they have. So it might be very relevant and causing a lot of traffic. So this aspect should also be taken into consideration when they discuss their strategy. Right now, the strategy comes from very much from the national strategy. It is very far from their regional needs and the needs of the inhabitants and what are their habits in reality. So I think that first thing with raising the awareness, it is a huge barrier, but the huge barrier later is to get the competent people, the right strategy, and put the right projects to be completed with the right financing. And I think it should be the way we should try to pursue with such innovative solutions. The Sprout project in Kalisz city is probably the first initiative that came with real analysis what the inhabitants think about the traffic and so on, noise, but it should be extended and taken to the higher level of discussion.
Thank you so much, Gosia, for your insights. Really interesting. András?
Thank you. And I think it is true, which Gosia said. So, but I would like to start a bit further as well, but in another aspect, because I think one of the main challenges, and I think the main challenge is that the city center of Budapest is not so livable and not so humanized. And one of the main reason of it is because the streets of Budapest is struggles with cars. The streets are really car dominated, and it's not good. In the last 5 years, in every year, the population of Budapest were decreased, and meanwhile, the population of the agglomeration is increased. So there are more people who are commute longer distances every day, and more probably use a car in their normal days. So I think we should develop our city centers in a more livable way, and we should keep the inhabitants in the city center, because after that they will travel shorter distances in every day, and in the aspect of the mobility, we should reallocate our spaces which we are using for transportation, and we should choose more efficient and sustainable urban mobility modes to create more space for I don't know, for livable and humanized public spaces as well. And indeed, I think we should have more awareness raising campaigns and participative planning process and so on to involve the citizens in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, András. It's really interesting hearing about this need to humanize again the city centers of European cities. Carlo, you're the next.
Thank you, Teresa, and it's of course a pleasure to participate to this interesting session. And regarding the first question, challenges and barriers, I think that in order to deploy innovative mobility solution, one of the first, the main aspects that have to be taken account is the difficulty, the challenges, the challenge to harmonize and balance a new mobility solution in a already defined context, urban context, and in Padua, this means this is reflecting especially on narrow spaces and when you introduce something new, of course, it's like a puzzle. All the pieces need to really reset themselves in order to ensure a new balance, to find a new equilibrium, and this is not simple. And all the components and the actors, the stakeholders active on the same area and in the same time need to adapt themselves to the new solution. And secondarily, as already Gosia and András were saying, also the livability aspect is extremely important. I mean that the different transport solution need to take in account needs with coming from economic, social, and environmental sustainability aspects. I think these are the main challenges. About the barriers, these can reflect the acceptance by those already have ongoing commercial interest, which could be affected by the new solution. And so a typical barrier can be the difficulty to have a real dialogue with and proficient involvement with stakeholders and citizens. Due to specific needs or lack of interest by them to contribute adequately in the construction of new urban mobility solution. And another barrier that we recognized during also this route is the laws harmonization. I mean, with the new technologies, there is always a temporal mismatch between the speed of innovation and regulation.
Very interesting insights, Carlo. Again, the issue of the awareness, and we can imagine that putting in the streets an autonomous vehicle, an autonomous electric boat, it's not easy at all. Now, I think that is Batel's turn. Could you please let us know a little bit more about the specific barriers or challenges that you have suffered?
Hi. So for us, the main barriers that we anticipate at the moment is the bureaucracy that we have in the decision-making process. So I would say very likely that the one who screams the louder usually wins in the decision-making process concerning planning and mobility. We feel we have no structured process for decision-making, which includes all road users, including vulnerable ones, pedestrians, cyclists, and the user experience of the mobility services is not being brought into the process of decision-making in a significant and in a data-based manner. What we want to do is to bring structured and more adaptive innovation into this process of decision making. Another challenge that we face almost every day is how to use public complaints that are brought to our table in a way that can change policy, in policy. And so this is also what we try to do in one of our pilots, is to formalize a tool for prioritization for decision makers, so they will know how and where they need to make the compromises in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Batel. And Marcos, what's your experience? I think that Marcos he just got a phone call, but he's with us. Marcos, can you hear us? Are you with us? Okay. Could you let us know? No, don't worry. That happens.
Yes.
Could you let us know a little bit about the main barriers and challenges that you are experiencing?
Yes. In Valencia, we have detected three main challenges in three areas. One of this is the urban planning. One of the important challenges we have in Valencia is to achieve a real integration of the infrastructures dedicated to sustainable mobility with the existing infrastructures network in the city. Then not only to construct bike lanes, people must have one place to keep their vehicles and keep it safe and have clear connection between lanes, traffic lights, etc. Not only to construct the bike lanes, we have to create a real network in the urban planning. Another barrier we have find is that the legal constraints. Our public administration has a very low degree of agility to carry out contracts, agreements in accordance with the current legislation. Our laws and bureaucratic procedures are very rigid and long. Then they are not as agile than the new modes are. Then sometimes the public initiatives arrive really on delay with and with an over-regulation. The public statements, they have not the conscience real of the need to a new transport modes, more sustainable. And another thing we have noticed is that the people, they don't have a real environmental awareness. We have found they have a still poor awareness of the use of new intermodal models, combining cycling and public transport. And I think the barrier is to engage the citizens to really change their habits. People want to still want to go with their car from one door to another door and find the best parking place. I think we have to boost their awareness of a sustainable future, and I think the way we live and the way we move. I think the best way I know is education. I think children are the future, and it's our duty to raise their awareness with the planet and their conscience to mobility, sustainable mobility, and a new way of life, not based in carbon and as dependent of the mobility.
Thank you, Marcos, for your insights, and thank you because before moving to the next question to the cities, there is I think we can answer to the question that Bart has put in the chat. Initially, it is for Gosia, what would be a good strategy to raise awareness of inhabitants and administration? But one key regarding this has already been given by Marcos in his answer through education. It will be one of the strategy to follow. Gosia, do you want to build upon this?
I mean, I think there are. It has to be attacked from different angles, and of course, I agree with And with education, I would even say that we have to not only educate people towards raising awareness, but also educate the people on how to do the transition. And we actually need these competences. And we are right now in the position that we are learning and acquiring some knowledge. Such projects as Sprout, they contribute a lot, but they are so small things that contribute. It should be a more systematic approach rather than something incidentally. And I agree, education is something we should educate people to raise awareness on one hand, but we also should educate competent people to move on with the projects and with the specific solutions to be implemented.
Thank you so much, Gosia, for your answer. Then let's move to the next question to our cities. In your experience, what do you think that the cities need to achieve to realize this sustainable urban mobility environment, which are the main parameters? And Gosia, don't mute yourself because you will go the first again.
Okay, that's good because I'm losing connection, so I'm still online. So when talking about sustainability, I came back a little bit to the definition of sustainability, and what we have to remember about all three aspects when we talk about sustainability. And so the environmental, economy, and society. And all those three items should bring us on how to cope with them and how to balance them to actually meet the needs of the society, so they feel quite comfortable. Because I don't see, if we a little bit exaggerate with the indicators and put too much on limiting the traffic, so it brings the limited noise and so on, we will never close the shops, we will never close the services to be provided. So we have to a little bit balance on how to meet. For me, the main indicator to be successful should be how to make it comfortable to the inhabitants. And I think this is the key on how to reduce some traffic noise and so on. We have to remember that we will never eliminate those factors, but we have to balance them the way so people will feel comfortable on one hand, but they will also pay attention on how to limit those threatening areas. So for me, the nice indicator, and I think most of the inhabitants would agree, is the achievement of a comfortable life together with all these three components of sustainability.
Thank you, Gosia, for sharing your view on this. András?
Thank you. I think we should develop the efficient and sustainable urban mobility modes in Budapest, and we should give them more space, and we should promote them, as Gosia and Marcos and the others mentioned. We should engage the people. I think it's really important, and the education is also really important. But right now, I would like to focus on the sustainable urban mobility modes, because we think that we should combine the sustainable urban mobility modes, so the public transport with the shared mobility and the active mobility modes. And with in this integration, we identified two aspects of it. So the first is when we would like to improve the service level, and this is the MaaS, the mobility as a service solution. And in the Sprout project, we are focusing in the other aspect of the integration, which is when we would like to put the mobility modes, the sustainable urban mobility modes, in a concentrated area, and we are we are making easier the mode shifting, and because of that, we are implementing mobility points in all over the city, and it's in this pilot in the Sprout project, we are focusing on the micromobility, and we would like to make easier for the inhabitants to use the micromobility modes, and they can park their micromobility vehicles in a safe and efficient way in the city. So yeah, that's my point on this question. Thank you.
Thank you, András. And now, Carlo, what do you think? What do the cities need to achieve in order to realize the sustainable urban mobility environment?
Okay. I think it's particularly important that new mobility projects and solutions are designed taking in account needs and objectives already defined in the urban planning. For Padua, this is the main tool is represented by the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, SUMP, and this requires coordination and harmonization among political agenda, SUMP, and other different policies that need to go in the same direction, and in this the governance of the policies is a key factor for an effective implementation. Then another parameter is other parameters are the need of the existence of favorable and effective condition for the good implementation of urban mobility policies. This means both by physical, economic, social, environmental, and political sides. And then, of course, new mobility solutions have to consider different needs of users and citizens, and try to somehow foresee the future evolution of them. Then the solution needs to ensure reliability, effectiveness, and risklessness, and the nature of the policies adopted. And last but not least, the citizens' awareness and participation and the challenges faced by the new policies for sustainable mobility. I mean that choices and policies should not be dropped from above, but shared and communicated in a proper way, for example, with effective communication campaign but not just an isolated information, but it is something that need to be scheduled and built during the years of implementation of urban planning agenda.
Thank you, Carlo. I guess that sometimes also these co-creation techniques may help in this regard. Now it's the turn of Batel. What's your experience in Tel Aviv?
So in Tel Aviv, it's very interesting because we are currently building a new light rail transit system. We have 3 different lines that are being built in the city all at the same time. Some of them are also underground, so it includes a lot of digging, a lot of noise, and basically the entire city is under construction. It started 5 years ago, and now think it's the height of the construction because all 3 lines are being built at the same time. The third one only started this year. And so we are dealing with a lot of challenges in real time. I would say that the main parameters for success for us is to remove uncertainties, both for the decision makers as well as for the inhabitants and the businesses in the city. And we try to see how we can make accessible a lot of data and information, complete data and information to inform decision makers and making decisions in real time, and also make all the information regarding the construction works available for the public about the change that is going on in progress, because of course it has a lot of effect on businesses, on people who live. I myself live on a construction site in Roselló Street, so I can see how challenging it is, and also for me that I have all the knowledge and the information, how challenging it is. So I would say the parameter is the accessibility of information, removing uncertainties, and also to manage the change in real time. So we have everyday problems of maintenance, of appearances of the public space, how to keep the streets active, how to keep all the businesses active, how to keep accessibility to businesses, to stores, to restaurants, while the construction is going on in the street, how to keep the traffic flow. So some of the roads are blocked and we don't have alternative, people still use the cars. So how we can keep the traffic flowing, and if we have data available from Bluetooth, from other technological devices, it can be very helpful for decision makers to know how to direct the traffic different ways, how to keep safety for everyone, light, the streets in. So at the moment we feel that we don't have enough tools how to manage this huge change effectively, that it will interfere with daily life as the least possible.
Thank you, Batel. Uncertainty, accessibility of information. I think that the speakers and also the audience probably will relate with your case. Marcos, your turn.
Hello. And the main parameters I analyzed are related to the public way of mobility. I think the political decision is a good parameter to analyze. Sometimes the mobility of or infrastructure development policies are based on purely political decisions, with the aim of getting better election results instead of being based on real needs. I think to capture real wishes and needs of the user, it's a very long and slow way, but maybe it's not compatible with 4 years political horizons. I think we need long-term real policies, maybe truly restrictive and courageous policies to punish the car use and encourage the use of more sustainable models. At the same time, companies, enterprises should design company plans to adapt themselves to the needs of sustainable models, and transport to work plans, encourage their workforces to a new sustainable model, to adapt their installations to or their schedules, their model of work, to make easier to the worker to use the sustainable models. And this at this line, I think we need a leadership, more real and effective competence of metropolitan transport authorities. I think in Valencia, I think they have not as this leadership with the enough power to define the far policies and the promotion of new mobility solutions and urban planning management. And like this, I think it's good to design public incentive, like creation of further incentives to use the sustainable models, like a miles card program, both public, tax, aid, and they change. Okay, I made 30 miles of sustainable models, then I in my wallet, then I can change it for I don't know, a reduction of taxes or something similar, private companies, subsidies for transport, shopping bonus, I don't know. And we have, it's good to profit the digitalization of mobility and intermodality. I think the mix of sustainable mobility options can be combined with each other in a more effective way. New, smart, and innovative technologies should land to coordinate sustainable transport modes and offer to the people an attractive path to their destination. I think the development of digital solutions to connect the supply and demand of transport service in a personalized and dynamic way, not attending the user, they program their own path. I think the system, the digitalization can offer to the users the path to the way they want to go.
Thank you, Marcos. You have very interesting points, but I will keep this one of long-term strategies, not so dependent on political decisions.
Yes.
Okay. We have heard about the challenges of the cities when implementing the new mobility solutions, and now we want to come back to the audience and ask you a couple of questions. So please click on the link in the chat to the Mentimeter, and I will start sharing again my screen. Hello, perfect. And let's move to the next couple of questions. We will ask two questions, one regarding passengers transport and another regarding freight transportation. So looking at the future, regarding passengers mobility, which solutions do you think that will shape the future of urban passengers mobility the most? So please rank the 6 solutions that we selected as you consider that will shape the future of passengers mobility. The options are integrated mobility and micromobility, intermodal passenger transportation nodes. This is related to the bike stations in intermodal nodes and other type of micromobility stations in intermodal nodes, zero emissions vehicles, autonomous vehicles, this public sphere reallocation, right, in order to be not so dependent on the use of the cars, and data analytics driven traffic and mobility management. Okay, we will give some extra time since this type of ranking, when you ranking polls, it takes longer in order to select all the options and rank them. Also, time is needed in order to think and find a solution to the question. But integrated mobility and micromobility is the first one. It's interesting. And autonomous mobility may be the last one, since there are some issues to be clarified yet in order to implement it in real life environments and integrate it into with the rest of the elements on our cities. Perfect. We will move to the next one then, related to the freight transportation. So, in your opinion, we already voted. Okay. In your opinion, which solutions do you think that will shape the future of urban freight transportation the most? Maybe it's zero emissions vehicles. This is electric vehicles or cargo bikes. Again, autonomous vehicles for urban freight transportation, maybe digitally enabled city logistics. And here we were thinking about the smart parking and smart road infrastructures for freight movements. Collaborative logistics and micro consolidation. Here we were thinking about urban consolidation centers, micro depots, freight hotels, or maybe cargo hitching and cruise shipping, combining both passengers and freight transportation. Okay, so it was collaborative logistics and micro consolidation, but then it fell to the second position. And now it is intermodal freight transportation nodes. Interesting. And the digitally enabled city logistics in third place. And again, the autonomous vehicles, the last one, as we have mentioned before. I guess the same reasons. Good. Okay. I think that we can then close this poll and we can move on and continue. I will stop sharing the screen. Yes. And there is now one question to Batel for the particular case of Tel Aviv. How do you think that the data-driven approach followed in the project will help the municipality in redesigning the city's mobility environment?
So I think it relates to the previous question that I answered. It will mainly help to manage the change happening in a better way. It can help improve forecasting capacity, so we can know, for example, the number of cars that are entering the city in specific areas, in specific routes. And then it will help the municipality to understand the better affects the change and prepare for it appropriately. For example, in adding public transportation lines as alternative for people, adding bicycle lanes, and providing alternative options for people while this construction and change is going on in the city. For example, the Bluetooth detectors that we are using, this process is it is still in process. We still haven't finished, but we already understood some of the challenges. For example, by having incomplete data, which is a result of both unmonitored areas as well as maintenance problems. So in some areas, the Bluetooth detectors are not installed, and in areas we have malfunctioning detectors. So the data that we managed to gather is not entirely complete. This is one problem. I think another very interesting point for implementation can be in the traffic light project that we are doing. So at the moment, the instructions for a traffic light design is outdated. It is given by the government. What we try to do is that we want to include image processing based logic into the traffic light design. And in this way, while we tested through the Sprout pilot project, we can come to the central government, which is in charge for implementing this policy, and offer to change the current instructions because we can show the results that we have from the pilot, and the results actually prove that the effects on car traffic can be very minimal when we integrate this image processing into traffic light. This new technology enables us to identify vulnerable road users that cross the intersection and give them additional green light in the traffic. So I think this is one very important or one outcome that we can have from the project.
Thank you, Batel. All Sprout use cases are really interesting, but regarding this one, the last you mentioned, which is focused on vulnerable road users, I really encourage the audience to follow the progress of the project, because I really think that there will be very meaningful results coming out from it. Now I would like to continue. I would like to ask Beatriz regarding, well, you are leading the pilot's implementation, and you are also leading the impact assessment of the different use cases. So I would like to understand better which are the main challenges that you have found so far in these tasks, in impact assessment of the use cases.
Okay, so first, to differentiate implementation, okay, between the challenges for the implementation and the challenges for the data collection, okay, for the impact assessment. So about the first one, we have identified three main reasons, okay. The first one is we have working with disruptive innovations. The second one is COVID, so it has affected to the pilots. And finally, technical issues. So about the first one, the disruptive innovations, so the regulation is not prepared. So related to what Carlo and Marco said, so there is a huge gap between the technology pace and the regulation pace. So although we had foreseen, okay, that the administration work was going to take long, so in the end, the time was longer than expected. And this time so was aggravated by the second reason, that is COVID. So there were less people, okay, in the offices, and in some cases the teleworking was not possible, and this create an additional delay in the administrative work. And another reason why COVID impacted the pilot's implementation, so the social distance measures, okay, impeded the installation of some or the implementation of some cases. And specifically, for example, for creating calming zones, we wanted to install benches, trees, and terraces, and this was not possible because of these social distance measures. And finally, about the technical issues, that this happens while you are implementing, so sometimes it's difficult to anticipate. So, for example, we experience a challenge with the weather. So, in the case of the pilot, where we are using sensors, okay, in open space base for monitoring or improving the loading and unloading operations for or loading and unloading in urban freight operations, okay. So one of these sensors was damaged due to humidity, and the other one was removed. So we assume that it was removed while they were cleaning the streets from a high snow. And well, they only had one spare part, and they were only able to replace one. So it's like, this is something that you cannot anticipate. And the other one is that parcel lockers, okay, they are being installed in the underground. So, and here we are suffering internet coverage issues. And the last one is that the surveillance system in a secure parking for bikes that is close to the metro station was fired. So as I mentioned, these are things that are difficult to anticipate before they happen. And about the challenges for the data collection. So first, about the cases related to urban freight transport. This is something that is common. I think that there is no existing baseline data, okay, to compare the results of the experiment with the previous information. So we needed to have an additional data collection. Also impacted to the data collection, so the social distance and lockdowns impeded to for example, have or conduct face-to-face questionnaires, and we couldn't do this until these measures were removed. Also, the reduced mobility, okay, it creates some uncertainty about the usage of these mobility solutions. And finally, this is related to the case that I explained before about creating calm traffic zones. So as it was not possible to install benches and trees and so on, and we wanted to measure this humanity, this livability, so we had to consider some proxy. Okay, so other streets with similar layouts. So it's like, yeah, while you are running the implementation, you experience some challenges that are sometimes difficult to foresee. And these pilots are good to understand that these challenges that you cannot, as I said, anticipate. And
Yes. Thank you, Bea. Yeah, in this type of real-life implementations, there are always technical issues. On top of this, the pandemic was not foreseen by us at proposal stage. However, we are always finding ways in order to overcome those issues. So I will share again the screen. Allow me to set it, please. And it changes the presenter. Good mode, good. Yeah. So, well, indeed, as Beatriz and earlier the series have mentioned, we have faced different challenges in the solutions implementation that reflect those evidence-based needs for transition towards innovative solutions. We have found that an appropriate policy response should address certain points. So an appropriate policy response should address the issue of long-term political engagement towards innovation. An appropriate policy response should also, for instance, we have explained regarding these very disruptive mobility solutions, then sometimes new procurement procedures are needed. So in new innovation procurement frameworks for cities, also the organizational restructuring and capacity building for managing different procedures to support innovation. Sometimes the cities have also mentioned regulatory changes don't go in line with technology changes. And public investment. Public investment, maybe it is needed in order to improve internet connectivity in the cities. Maybe public investment in order to create campaigns for raising awareness or for developing digital twin infrastructures and gather data. This slide reflects some of the preliminary results that we have found in Sprout so far regarding what it is an appropriate policy response. So in the second part of this session, we will try to shed light about which are the main urban mobility elements that public authority should take into consideration before planning. What is the role of the stakeholders in the decision-making for innovative mobility, and how Sprout can help the cities into defining the sustainable and innovative policy responses. So in order to try to ask the first question, the main urban mobility elements, I will stop sharing the screen and I will the floor to my colleague Elpida. Meanwhile, no, I need to share the screen because I need to share the Mentimeter, sorry. I will give the floor to Elpida so she can tell us a little bit more about, she can explain about urban mobility elements.
So thank you, Teresa. So in order for Sprout to be able to provide the appropriate guidance to the cities in terms of how a city to apply policies for innovative mobility, as well as what is the appropriate policy response given a specific innovation, it was crucial to define first and identify which are these urban mobility elements that will be affected afterwards by a policy response. Taking also our previous discussion in the previous session, you can see that each city has different direction, different priorities and different problems. So each city authority should focus their attention to different urban mobility elements. So in terms of urban mobility elements, we can define them as these system entities where represent its main characteristics in a city, and the domains of innovation implementation. So taking also the processes associated to each element occurrence and the stakeholders related to the element's existence, we defined 8 urban mobility elements. So each element may be grouped, taking into consideration the typology of the relations and by a set of performance indicators. So we can move to the next slide. Thank you. So following an extensive desktop research on past attempts in identifying which are these indicators and which are these main areas of mobility and main elements of mobility, taking also an expert consultation process that implemented in the framework of Sprout, as well as Sprout's preliminary outcomes, we concluded on 8 main urban mobility elements. I will just very briefly explain this to you. In terms of availability, for example, as an urban mobility element, we are talking about the level of availability of mobility services in a city. What is the urban transport service structure mix? For example, indicative indicators may be the modal split, or if there is in a city available bike sharing stations, or if there is available car sharing services, because this is something that it's not much available in many cities, for example. Affordability. What we mean with affordability, we mean the prices of the mobility services. What is the level of prices in for using its services? What is, as well as that, what is the ownership costs in order for defining the affordability? Accessibility, we mean the accessibility for vulnerable groups, or accessibility, general accessibility to mobility services, for example, providing answers of if there is available, if there is the available infrastructure, mobility infrastructure for providing accessible mobility services. In terms of safety and security, which is one of the fourth urban mobility element, it's quite clear regarding accidents, fatalities, as well as employment and social security, because now the transition shows that we're going towards more flexible employment, and gig employment and individual contractors. So we need to know if there is important to set the policy framework for providing social security. In terms of efficiency and convenience, these elements represent during a trip what is probably the satisfaction of the traveler. In terms of efficiency, we can say that we are talking about how the space is allocated, the urban density. We are talking about the level of urban transport service volumes, the level of traffic, the level of congestion on the streets. And in terms of convenience, we are talking about smart public transportation services, provision of smart payment systems, for example, for the public transportation services, the urban transport service level in general, and as well as the level of multimodality. If there is, for example, an app for facilitating the multimodality in general mobility, if there are, for example, intermodal transportation nodes, as we discussed in the previous session. And the final 2 urban mobility elements, the first one is sustainability, which refers to the potential negative externalities in terms of climate change, air quality, and noise of the urban mobility system. And then policy making and additional investments, which reflects if there is integrated planning already in a city, if there are available urban regulations towards urban mobility efficiency and effectiveness, if there is needed of urban transport operational capital and expenditure, as well as reflecting the user's behavior.
And now we would like your point of view on the point of view of the audience regarding the urban mobility elements that just Elpida just explained. So please rank those urban mobility elements regarding their importance when planning for innovative mobility. In your opinion, which are the most important ones or the less important ones? This poll will take longer since there are 8 options. I think that more or less we are good with the schedule. So far, sustainability and accessibility. We are talking about innovative mobility, so it makes lots of sense. Still sustainability and accessibility, first and second place. Safety and security, definitely it's important for planning for innovative and non-innovative mobility. Okay. You can continue voting. Meanwhile, we will move forward with the next question. And this question is regarding stakeholders. This goes for our colleague Sara. How do you think that can stakeholders affect the process of decision making on innovative mobility? What's your experience in the project?
Yes, thank you, Teresa, for the question. I think we've seen that overall stakeholders have really a crucial role in decision making, in the sense that their support can decide how robust or not a decision that you take will be, and whether or not it would be able to last in time. I think it was Carlo who mentioned that that in Padova they had the challenge of defining the needs of citizens. And I think that's really important to know what your stakeholders need, what their objectives are. There also should be a knowledge exchange with your stakeholders, because we tend to forget that they also know things that at the political or at the research level we might not know, because they know the terrain probably better than we as externals do. So I think that's a really important loop to have, this knowledge exchange with the stakeholders, because they really can add valuable information. It's something that might be time consuming. I think we've seen that in the stage of the project that we are at now, which I'll explain in a bit. It's a trade-off, because it does take time to consult, but I think it's definitely a value added. At the moment in the Sprout project, we are assessing policy alternatives for the pilots, and for this we're using what we call the multi-actor, multi-criteria analysis. And this is made to help take the opinion of stakeholders into account. So it allows us to take the objectives of each stakeholder group into account, and that way we can come to a good overview of the advantages and disadvantages of different options that we are considering for each of those stakeholder groups. So we know how they might be affected, so we know what their opinions are on the alternatives. And this can give an idea of how much support there is for different project options, which comes back to how robust or not the decision that you take will be. So a tool like MAMCA or like another participatory tool can allow for the involvement of these stakeholder groups and to really increase the support for the option that will eventually be chosen, and to really have this knowledge exchange with the stakeholders.
Thank you, Sara, for your interesting short reflection regarding the stakeholders' role. And now we have the last of our polls today. We would like to know, and share screen. Yes, we would like to know your opinion also on the following question: in who do you think are the main veto stakeholders without whose explicit approval a policy response won't be accepted? So the key players or the veto players that you need to have on board. Without it, the policy response won't move forward and won't be implemented or accepted. I think that you have up to 3 options here in these questions, and you can select up to 3 types of stakeholders. Here, well, the options are users, and here we were thinking about residents or tourists, public administration, so city council, other public departments, public sector stakeholders, so maybe the police or civil protection, transport operators, being public or private. In this case, we were thinking about logistics service providers, and maybe local commercial businesses or data technology companies or others. Here in others, we were thinking about energy providers, charging stations providers, or other type of infrastructure providers. So the users are without the users having the users on board, or policy response won't be accepted. Public administration, of course. It's really interesting. The results that we are getting are really interesting. Okay, so public administration and transport operators, being public or private, and the users. Good. Please let me stop sharing then. And we will have our last question just before closing the session. This is quite crucial, right? How can cities be supported in defining their sustainable and innovative policy responses? So here I will give the floor first, maybe to Sara to answer.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. I think what we've seen from the project, I think what's important is, in order to devise sustainable and innovative policy responses, you should kind of know what future direction that you are working towards and what you want to achieve. However, in the past, a lot of times the future direction is decided often by using forecasts, which are interesting, but they can often be inaccurate, especially over the longer term, so more than 5 years. So using forecasts is interesting, but it needs to be complemented with something else. What we did within Sprout is that we developed semi-quantitative and more qualitative scenarios in order to kind of have an array of different futures that we could be working our way towards. So they are different futures that are equally plausible in our current situation. And the way that this can help is that as the scenarios show alternative futures, they can help in decision making today. Because depending on what you want to achieve in the future, or what you absolutely want to avoid, depending on these future scenarios, you can implement the right policy decisions today to steer towards one or the other future. So from past experiences in scenario building, however, it's been shown that this scenario building is also important to be participatory. And here we come back, I think, to the stakeholders, because again, if you develop scenarios that are with the knowledge of your stakeholders and with their expertise, they are city relevant and they are relevant to the local context and with local knowledge. And this again makes the scenarios more robust, so it gives a clear view of what you could be working your way towards and how to achieve it. So this can help with the implementation of policy, in the sense that if people participated in the scenario building process, they also might understand the policy decisions that are being made depending on the scenarios. So if you know what you're working towards, if you participated in the process, you will understand the reasoning behind the implementation of certain policy. And I think that's briefly my input.
Very interesting view on the qualitative or semi-quantitative methodologies that can be followed. Elpida, would you like to add something to what Sara said?
Actually, I think I'm fully covered. Actually, in Sprout, we wanted to develop a hybrid approach. We wanted to to capture the policy making from different perspectives. So qualitative approaches like scenario building methodologies was quite crucial in order to identify how the mobility environment will look in the future, taking the opinion and of the stakeholders involved. And then we can go to the quantitative approach. So the first thing gives us an insight how this will look, how the cities expect their mobility environment will look in the future. Then we have what's the role of the stakeholders in the policy making, what's their main objectives and criteria identified by VUB during the policy making process. And then we can go and highlight why we need also mobility data for driving policy, for understanding first our current mobility system. This is why in Sprout we collected data in the first work packages in order to see what's the current mobility system. And then we intend to see how each urban mobility element presented below will evolve with time, taking the implementation of the policy reaction. So following this, we intend to develop quantitative tools for supporting policy making. One of these tools that will be developed in Sprout is an urban policy model using the system dynamics methodology, which intends to better understand the interrelations between urban mobility operations, new mobility solutions and urban policies, and support eventually the decision making. So using this model, the decision maker will be able to easily identify how the various elements in an urban mobility system interact with each other, what's the role of the urban stakeholders in that, and dynamically compare the policy responses individually or in combination, taking their impact to the mobility environment. So for this reason, we need data. This is something ongoing. We just started the methodology, and we expect to deliver a tool where the decision maker will see and will play among it, using based on a specific objective, based on a specific challenge. See how a certain mix of policies will affect its city's urban mobility system, and as well as what's the perfect mix of policies, taking into account the interests and the priorities of the veto stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Elpida, for your explanation. There are certainly very interesting results in the project ahead. So yeah, we all are really looking forward to continue working on the project and achieve those results. I will just, we are almost on time, just 1 minute after 1 CHF time. So I will take only 1 minute of your time in order to wrap up a little bit. We have in the session, we have heard the experience of 5 cities implementing new urban mobility solutions. We have learned about how the transition is currently taking place in their cities and what is needed in order to transition towards a sustainable urban mobility environment. We have seen local level problems when implementing mobility solutions that are an evidence of the need for an adequate policy response. For instance, the new procurement procedures for really innovative and disruptive solutions that currently are taking too long due to administrative procedures. Public investments for innovation, long-term political engagement. Also, we have seen that stakeholders play a vital role in co-creation, and some of them have the power of the veto power, and we need to have them on board when defining a new policy. And we have found out that there is a hybrid methodology that can be followed as an holistic approach for policy making, qualitative approach through a scenario building, through multi-stakeholder decision making, and also this in combination with quantitative approaches for an evidence-based policy making through, for instance, system dynamics methodologies. So there are no further questions in the Q&A tab. So I think that we can close the session. I want to thank you for being so great speakers and for your support on the session. And I really think that your insights can add value and are really of value for the audience that have been with us or can review the video after the conference.